Welcome to Dataclay's first podcast. I'm Alan Barnwell. I handle sales and marketing here at Dataclay, and I'll be your co-host today. But now it's time to introduce your host for the podcast, our founder, CEO, and chief developer, Ari Stavchansky. Hey, Ari.
Hey, Alan. Thanks for that intro. Thank you. All right. Okay. Yes. Thanks for arranging all the technology around this. Everyone, thanks for joining. I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to take a look at this new app that we have. We think that it's going to fill up a gap in the whole process of this automated video content creation. And, it's still in beta, so there can be some hiccups. And usually on the day of, there is a hiccup. So just bear with us if there are any. Okay. I want to begin by sharing how all of these apps that we offer now work together and where Projector fits into that. And so I made this diagram that kind of gives you the 50-foot view of what's going on. So over here in this purple frame, we've got our three huge offerings, our main offerings. We have Dataclay Templator, QUE, and now Projector. And as a set, we want to call them, or we're starting to call it Dataclay Station, where if you have all three of these, you are really set up to create and broadcast the content that you are producing with data. Okay, so essentially what we have here is a method by which you can create content, or an end user can create content very easily through a web form. And so anybody can, use a web form, or, people who have any browser or mobile app or something like that. The data ends up inside of QUE as a job. And we call them jobs because the data that comes in from the form eventually gets processed by Templator and Projector. So each one of these rows is known as a job. Now, once all these jobs get filled up in what we call a campaign, Templator will recognize that new data is coming into a campaign. It has a direct connection into QUE, which is fantastic in terms of, ease of use for when you actually connect Templator to this. And it will basically take the data from a job and reversion what we call an autograph. Now, an autograph is nothing more than an After Effects project that has been rigged with Templator. And the data gets merged into the master autograph, and then there's an output that gets created either by the After Effects render queue, or if you're using replication, which is a feature in Templator, it will create a replica of the autograph After Effects project. So here's where, once all that content is being made, what we're noticing is that our users, our awesome customers, they want a method to actually get that content out there, how to do it, right? So we came up with this desktop app that is called Projector. And it's kind of one of these things where we have no insight into anything that it's processing on your machine. So it goes along with kind of our philosophy of the end user being in complete control of their creative output. So, we don't actually see any of the output. We don't know where it's actually transferring to. The only thing that we would have any insight into is the data, and even that can be protected through masking and things like that. Now, back to Projector. Once Projector notices that the job in QUE is in a certain state, that is, the render is finished or the replication is finished, it will then pick up the asset and process it through a number of steps. So in Projector, there's this notion of a mission control, and a Projector can do many missions in parallel. So a mission is basically when it takes the asset from After Effects' output via Templator, and it does things like exports, assembles, transcodes, deploys, logs all that metadata after it deploys, and then does a cleanup step, and then that all the original job data source gets modified with all that log information so that you can then integrate with another app. So if I zoom up in here a little bit, what happens is for every mission, we're seeing a few things here. The export and the assemble, these are features that will allow one to use AE Render, or in the future Lottie, to get an After Effects replica export it into an asset so that you don't have to wait on Adobe Media. You don't have to wait on After Effects' render queue to finish. And then an assembly step, which would effectively stitch the dynamic frames with the non-dynamic frames that are cached, and that's going to take a while. So we'll probably add that feature into general availability, not the beta. But if you're using Templator to render out video content, the transcode will happen. Projector will know that the asset is on the machine, and it will transcode it to a format that makes sense for deployment to an archival platform or a streaming platform. But not only will it transcode the asset itself, it will also extract a poster image that will be used for the thumbnail of your video player that's inside of the streaming platform. And it will extract a GIF clip if you want to have some kind of animation displayed in a non-traditional video player. After the transcode happens, and by the way, FFmpeg is built into the app. We are using it to kind of handle all of the transcode and extract it and GIF conversion, all of that kind of stuff. So it's very robust, tried and tested, lots of options there. And we'll be continuing to build out the options in the user interface of Projector. After the transcode happens, then we get into the deploy stage. And the deployment is where it actually takes the asset away from your file system on the machine that is running Projector and Templator, and it puts it somewhere else. And if I scroll down here, we can see that we have support in the beta app. We have support for Amazon S3 buckets. So new or separate archival platforms will be supported in the future, but for now, S3 is what we're launching the beta with. This means that you would basically have to have your own AWS account and set up a S3 bucket, and then inside of the Projector app, you configure it so that it it knows where to place the asset when it deploys. So the next part of the deployment is what we call the streaming. And the stream is basically, it sends the content, the actual asset, to the provider. And out the gate, we're going to be supporting JW Platform and Vimeo. The reason we're doing this is because these are very old and tried and tested platforms. They have really great analytics systems, and they have very, very nice user interfaces to manage the uploads that Projector places in there. So these two will be launching with, but later on we'll be adding more video streaming providers. Now, I'm going to back up a little bit again and show you that each one of these missions, it can happen in parallel, so that you can speed up rendering, you can speed up deployment, because the Projector is basically going to be utilizing more than one thread to get content rendered and deployed. So once we have the export feature, the export step implemented in Projector, it effectively becomes the rendering engine that all of our customers we know want, because the rendering of the After Effects replicate file will be done in parallel. So you can have more than one render happen at the same time, and you don't need to rely on the internal After Effects render engine. Okay, so after the content gets to the stream, or to the provider hosting the stream, it then gets the metadata for each stream, and it logs it back into the job from whence it came. So meaning that, like, for every job that Templator processes and outputs, Projector will do the transcode, deploy it, and then write back to that job where the URL is for that video stream. And from there, you can then take the data and use a marketing automation platform to insert links, insert images, things like that, GIFs. You could use Twilio, stuff, MailChimp, stuff like that, to get real campaigns done with this personalized communication. So if we look at after the logging happens and it's all written back, then Projector does some cleanup work, because there's a lot of transcoding and a lot of stuff that's happening in terms of the file system. So once all of the logging is inside of QUE, all that metadata rather is inside of QUE, QUE users can then QA. They can quality assure the content make sure that it looks good, that it's actually shareable, because with this kind of stuff, you want to make sure that there is some kind of QA step. And then eventually the end user, rather the end consumer, will consume the video in a variety of devices. And that's what this is right here, right? There's a variety of emotions that we all go through when we get content that's tailored to us. So if we back up, that's kind of the whole station. That's the system. Again, we are in a kind of a beta phase, so there might be some things that kind of go wrong, but we'll get through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop on over to this web form that I put together, and this web form is going to drive this this project that we have, this autograph that we have in After Effects. And basically what this is it's a tracked shirt that we used. We used Chris Vranos's lockdown to do the tracking. And basically makes sure that the image that gets reversioned out here tracks together with the model's movements. And then, of course, we have color variation, and we have text swapping as well. So the data, I'm not going to show you how all of this stuff is rigged, because that takes a considerable amount of time. It's part of the step in creating an autograph that works with Templator. But just know that the data is mapped to this QUE campaign, this custom shirt model campaign right here. So each one of these jobs is a new version of this here. And so when I click through Templator and I walk through the data, you're seeing how each one of these jobs looks inside of the composition that is going to eventually be exported and distributed. Okay, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is just kind of show you how this data gets into the QUE campaign. So this form is a JOT form, very easy to build. It's a point and click web form builder, and then we use something called Zapier that connects the submitted data from when the user clicks submit. It connects it, and it puts it into a specific campaign in QUE. So we call that a trigger. The trigger is that somebody clicks submit on the form. Zapier recognizes that, and then it says, okay, we're going to insert a new job into Dataclay QUE. And all of these selections here down here, I'm not going to go through in detail, but you can see that we've selected the custom shirt model campaign. This is the autograph we're going to use, which has the lockdown, this guy right here. And then the satellite is the machine that the job will be assigned to, namely my MacBook Pro that I'm using right now. And then here's where all these data values map from the form here. So these are the keys and these are the values. So once I submit something here, it goes through this Zap, and then it eventually goes into the campaign. So I'm just going to open up one of these guys here, and you can see I'm going to close the stream because some of them are already on the stream. But you can see here these key values right here. These are coming in from the web form. Even the image that gets uploaded from the web form gets sent as a string, as a URL. Okay, so and the colors are coming in as hex values. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just create a new job, and we're going to click on here, and I've got some of these logos that one of our team members, Jeff Schoessler, made from Midjourney. It's just a generative AI thing. And so I'm going to go ahead and choose something like, let's try this guy. So I'm going to hit open. Oops. I don't know what's going on with my machine now. Okay, there it is. And then let's go ahead and choose what color shirt the model will be wearing. I'm going to go ahead and choose that. And then the background that the model will be in front of, I'm going to go ahead and choose this. And then the overall theme color, which is just the geometry color that's in the background of this video composition. I'm going to click that. So in the title, I'm just going to say awesome beats, because that relates to this logo. And the header is going to say, new styles for you. And the body text will be something along the lines of, come check out our new styles of t-shirts for your taste, something like this. Okay. And I won't use a period. And then for the data, or for the kind of web URL, I'm just going to go ahead and say custom sure, my customsure.com, something like that. Okay, so all this data has been set up by the end user. I'm going to hit submit, and this Zap is actually going to run on the trigger of submission. So then I go back into here. I'm going to go into the campaign inside of QUE and hit reload, and we should see a job appear that is ready to be processed by Templater. So there it is right there, and I'm going to go ahead and sort by created so that it's on the top. And this is effectively, if I open up this is all the data coming in from that web form. So that's how you get data into QUE very quickly. You have to use some kind of, you can either, you can code your own API interface, or you can use one of these no-code platforms like Zapier, and there's other ones out there that you can also use. So all the data is here, and inside of Templater, what I can do is, if I go to the beginning, let's see if it's going to pick that up. And there it is. There's the image that I uploaded. Here are the colors that were selected. Here are the texts that were also selected. So in this case, what I'm going to go ahead and do is just enable the bot. And when I enable the bot, what happens is Templater looks at the status and it says, okay, this one's ready. So it's going to take this asset or this job and process it into output. So I'm going to hit enable bot, and it's saying the bot assigned to satellite my MacBook Pro is now enabled. And it's going to take, it does a polling. And when it polls and it finds this, it's going to change it into queued, and then it's going to go into a processing state. So it's processing. So now we can see After Effects is automatically, inserting it and creating the content. Now I've done this output module as a low fidelity. It's a draft setting to just get through the render very quickly. So the quality is lower. But you can see, it actually did its thing and it is done. Okay, great. So I'm going to leave the bot on, and just what we're going to do is we're going to now look at how Projector is going to behave. Now, if we go over here, I'm going to X out of here. This is Projector over here, and this is Vimeo over here. And we've got this thing called showcases. Now you can see I've been practicing for the demo. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go into Projector, and I'm going to change the playlist / showcase name here in this streaming globals to something else. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. I'll name this group of content that I want to have inserted into the showcase so that it's organized. So I'm going to say live demo, or live demo. Let's see, Projector demo. Okay, so I'm going to hit save. And it's saved into the streaming globals, and I'm connected to Dataclay QUE. You set it up by authorizing. You authorize, and there's a number of settings. I'm not going to go into the exact details, but once you're authorized, you can get all the campaigns that are in your QUE account. And in this case, I want to connect to the custom shirt model campaign. I'm going to hit save, and then what we're going to do is just real briefly look at the transcode. Basically, what's going to happen is the transcode is going to actually happen. It's going to create and archive a poster image. It's going to create a GIF, and it's going to archive the GIF. And the storage area is where you enter in details about where your S3 bucket is. So you go into here, and there's all this info. And I'm not going to hold on to that frame very long because it's got some data in there that's sensitive. And then you can see that for the streaming service, we can select either Vimeo or JW. Right now we're connected to Vimeo, and there's a step for authorizing your Vimeo account, and you do that through here, and you sign in, and you basically get a token, and then it saves it into Projector so that it can actually write to Vimeo, to your Vimeo account. And I'll get into these details a little bit later. And so what happens is down here we have this Projector bot. And I'm just going to enable it. And it's going to check QUE every 5 seconds for new data. And what happens is it's going to say, okay, it found a done job and it is pending on the stream. So now we can see that there's one mission that is working right now. It's encoding. Now it's making a GIF. And if I go back to QUE, it's showing that it's in this transcoding state. Now it's deploying to S3. and it's going to put it onto Vimeo as well here. So after this is done, that is what we would call a successful mission. I'm going to show you how it would operate in batch, but it looks like we do have an error here. And if I look on my showcases, I'm going to reload just to see if it did actually make it up to Vimeo. There's the showcase we have, and there is the oops, I'm sorry. There is the video itself right here. So I'm going to say view on Vimeo, and when you upload content to the platform, it does its own thing. Like, it will take the asset and it will do things like multi-bit rate encoding to handle things like mobile connections and fast connections, things like that. And so the content is now here. It's available. You can, share it. All that data that's driving this is basically here. And, there's an error that has been recorded, but that might be like a post error that I don't know exactly what it might be. But if we go to edit the job, we can see now there is a stream object, a stream key inside of this job. And then we have viewing information and then asset information. Now, the asset information is basically where the hard downloads are. Like, if I wanted to grab this GIF, I could literally copy this, go into here, paste, and then the GIF is going to get downloaded, and there it is. So let's see, here it is. And then it looks like this. It's a very bad GIF clip, and I'll explain why. But basically, that's what that does, is it basically writes, the assets are where the URLs to the bucket are. And then we have the view, which is basically where the data is for where the URLs are that you're going to want to share, or you might need to embed in your own app or something like that. So there's the iframe, and then there's there's the preview, and then there's the broadcast. So if I take this right here and I go into a new window, I got to get rid of these quotes because of the copy function there. You can see it takes us right here. And so in the future, what we're going to do is we will, basically have a pop-up window inside of the QUE dashboard that would show the asset. So you don't have to actually leave QUE to see to QA. So that's in the works right now. But more importantly, one thing that I do want to point out is this data right here is coming from the job data that created the content, right? We see the awesome beats here. Here's the awesome beats there. We see the description here. Here's the description inside of the video. So for that, we have this concept inside of Projector that basically, it's disabled, but inside of Projector here, if we go to the streaming service and we do setup, we have options for the title and the description. And we did our best to really figure out what pieces of data, what variables really make sense across all of these video streaming providers, right? Like whether it's JW or Vimeo or Mux or something else. So title and description, that's always going to be there. It's always going to be present. This title is basically coming in from the data, and we use this percent format, this this stream title and stream description key from the QUE job. Where is it? Oops, it's here. So you can see here we have this stream title and stream description here. And these two keys are basically being used inside of the Vimeo upload settings. And when you have the percent wrapped around those keys, that means Projector is going to look at the job data and say, okay, this is what the value is going to be when it gets up to the streaming platform. Now, the other thing to note is that player preset refers to this notion that in Vimeo, you can have multiple players that are branded for your clients. And so that can be determined in, let's see, I believe it's going to be here in videos, and then embed presets. And so here you can see I've got this Dataclay demo, and here it says Dataclay demo. And so what this means is that if I click on this, I get an opportunity to really brand out this player. Like you can see if I highlight or hover over this play button, I get my Dataclay green. And then it doesn't show it here, but the Dataclay logo will be there because it's, I've set it up here and so on and so forth. So you can set the player type for every job that gets uploaded. Okay. So that's effectively the globals for the streaming provider. The other important aspect that I wanted to share with you is the notion of the multi-threaded. So the multi-threaded nature of Projector, which is something that we worked really hard to get right. So I'm going to go ahead and enable the bot now. And this is a desktop app that is basically running Chromium, and so it's got kind of like a console similar to a browser. And this is how we're able to basically debug and troubleshoot things like that. What I'm going to go ahead and do is the projection is enabled, and I'm going to go ahead and go back to QUE. And in this case, I'm just going to select everything, and I'm just going to change the streaming statuses for all of these to pending. And so what's going to happen here is once I do that, Projector will pick them all up and process them in parallel. So let's see what happens, and hopefully this works. So we're going to go to pending, and so now all of the renders would be done. And okay, that's not okay. Come on, I'm going to reload this. Let's see if this comes through, and let's try that again. So pending. Okay. Let's see. It might be because this one errored out. So let's go ahead and do one by one. Oh, now they're set to pending. Okay. That's interesting, but that's what I'm talking about. So these are set to pending, but the projection is on and it's having issues getting the data. So we're going to scroll down, see what's going on here. Finally, it picked it up. You can see that in parallel, all of these are being encoded. If I go back to QUE, you can see these are being transcoded. They're in a transcoded state. All of them together on the machine are being processed at once. Now, the more you have in parallel, the slower things actually go. Like it does actually take more time to do. So it's going to sit here for a little bit to try and get through those encodes. Once the encodes happen, then it's just a matter of extracting the poster, getting that GIF clip, and then putting them up onto your Vimeo provider. While that's happening, though, I do want to show you inside of the bucket. Oh, now it's doing the GIF. Inside of the bucket right here, I've got this. This is my S3 bucket from Amazon. You can see content is being uploaded as we speak. Like here's the deploy step. So if I continue to hit reload on this, more content gets uploaded. And then now the Vimeo deploy is happening here. And so once the deploy happens, all the data gets written back to QUE and it's all logged. So if I go back to my Vimeo area with my library and open up that showcase, which allows me to organize, I have this showcase right here. We should see all of them right here. And so if I, go one by one, I can see what they actually look like. I can go here and say, okay, well, these ones are already, they're being, post processed, if you will, to make sure that they play back nicely inside of different apps with different connectivity rates. So let's take a look. Yeah, so you can see here, it's kind of optimizing each one. And here's this one's complete. And so that one is this logo didn't turn out pretty well or pretty nicely, but you get the idea. So, I mean, that's that's what it is in a nutshell. Now, we are obviously working on some issues here that we'll get the kinks worked out, but that is effectively Projector in a nutshell. I'm going to, in an overview, I want to dive into the transcode area because I know that some of y'all are really interested in the details. So if you click setup inside of the transcoding area, you get to choose some codec, a bit rate, the pixel format, the audio codec, the audio bit rate. You can choose where you want Projector to actually, like a scratch disk area where the transcoded stuff should end up. And then you have an opportunity to rescale content if you feel like you want to do that for whatever reason. You can, and this is not connected via, aspect ratio, so you got to be careful here. And then the poster image allows you to determine which second inside of the rendered asset should the poster image be. So if I hit just reload on here, this file here, or this this thumbnail right here is 1 second in to the actual rendered video asset. So during the transcode phase, the PNG is extracted, and then Projector uses that PNG and tells Vimeo, use this PNG for the thumbnail, which is very important. And the reason it's important is because when you're doing personalized communication, the thumbnail actually becomes very, very critical to the success of the open rate. So if you have a dynamic frame with somebody's name, or you have sports scores and you want to show those scores before somebody hits play or before auto playback even happens, then your poster frame becomes very, very critical. The image width is how large the poster should be, and we are going to make that just width because we want to lock the aspect ratio to match the actual video aspect ratio. And then you can choose between PNG and JPEG and change the image quality setting. Now, down below, we have what's called the GIF preview clip, and that is the settings for the GIF extraction. And basically, you can determine how, or the FPS of your GIF. You can say where you want that clip to start from, and then how long that clip should last. And that's why when you saw that GIF that I showed you, it was all, it was just a half second starting from time 0. So you can change this. And in the future, by the time we get to beta release, these will be data driven. So you'll have an opportunity to to insert, the percent format to get data that's in the job into these settings here to make it all work the way that you want, because some videos might be shorter than others and so on and so forth. And then you also have another opportunity to change the width of it. And the reason all of these are here, the reason we have a lot of these settings available is because we know that y'all are creating content like en masse, right? So like if you have 1,000 GIF images, your storage becomes a real, issue. It becomes a problem. You have to really figure out, can my S3 bucket support all this content? Can my Vimeo account at its tier support this much content, right? So that's one of the reasons why we have this. Like if you have a lower frame rate, that's going to make your GIF smaller. If the GIF is shorter, it's going to make it smaller in kilobyte size, right? So you just need to think about that kind of stuff when you're talking about a massive campaign. If you're talking about a smaller campaign, not a big deal. You'll probably be fine. So that's effectively where I want to stop. I know it's been a lot, and I'm want to open the floor to questions that might have come in, and yeah. So Alan, do we have any questions?
We have a number of people who've commented. We've had a great stream today.
Great.
We've maintained a high number of our attendees who joined, and so I know there's a number of people watching. We're a little delayed in terms of the stream, so that's going to, as we're saying this, it's going to take probably a minute for people to hear us say it.
Okay.
I did put into the chat as it started that we wanted to take questions, and maybe some folks will have questions, but right now I'm just seeing people commenting. Thank you for all the great comments that we're getting. We really appreciate it. If you do have any questions, we want to hear them. Also, I want to say, while everybody's on the stream, that we're planning to do our podcast once a month, and ultimately we may be going more frequently, but we are going to have guests on the podcast.
Yes.
If you are using our product,
yes,
and you are interested in letting people know of your use case and hear your story, please reach out to us, because we do want to showcase our users on this podcast, as well as talk about specific use cases and how our products are being used. This is a product that is going into beta. We're opening that up very soon.
Yes.
That's what this podcast is about. Ari, I know you told me that you wanted to do this first episode about
Yes.
Projector for the very fact that
It's coming.
On a new product, it's hard to get the documentation out as soon as you're ready to release the product.
Yeah.
Do you want to say a little bit about that?
Yeah. So yeah, we just so y'all know, like I'm gonna share just a little bit about where Projector's headed. You can see that the UI is kind of, it's very basic, but it works, right? It functionally, we needed to build it. We've been putting a lot of effort into the design and understanding more about how people are going to start thinking about campaigns with Projector. And so, we're looking at, this is kind of like the future of the interface, right? Like here's the splash screen. You start by clicking the plus button. You first link up your data sources. You can authorize. We're going to be supporting, by the way, Projector will be supporting Google Sheets as a data source, not just QUE. So that is coming as well. And you'll be able to authorize the data sources first, because that's our philosophy, is that data is driving everything across all of our apps. Once you authorize everything, then you add a campaign, and then the campaigns basically come in, and you can choose which ones you want to add. And then on a per campaign basis, you can set up things like, let's see, you can have multiple campaigns set up. Like you can click add another campaign, and then it continues to add to this list on the left. You can group campaigns together if you have different clients, and you're creating content for different clients and things like that. And then basically for every campaign, you can have specific transcode settings. You can have specific, poster image times. You can have all different kinds of things for different campaigns. So the campaigns kind of are the way to imagine. It's kind of like a logical grouping of the data. And so, this is kind of the future of where we're headed in terms of, how the UI is going to behave. We're trying to make it so that it's not a scrollable thing right here. We want it to be more contained, more, basically like operate even on a 1024 by 768 kind of thing. And so that's it. So, it's just going to be a much better flow in terms of authorizing certain platforms as you bring them to the table. Now, I will say that, there are solutions out there where, you don't have to think about anything with regards to the streaming, with regards to the storage. You don't have to think about that at all. They kind of black box all these vendors for you. We put a lot of thought into that, and that's not something that we want to put our initial efforts into. We, again, are all about the pro user using the applications in a way that they feel very safe and comfortable with regards to the privacy of the content. So that's why Projector's you can kind of think of it as a hub of these platforms and services that you yourself bring. And so that's going to make the cost of the Projector license much, much lower than if we were, hosting everything in the cloud. So, it's up to the end user to determine how much investment they want to make into all of this kind of distribution stuff, right? And they can, they can choose and see for themselves where things are being charged in different aspects of the app. So I just wanted to share that with you. It's not these things take more time than necessary sometimes, but we are putting a lot of TLC, a lot of tender loving care here on the UI.
Hey, Ari.
Yeah.
And I was trying to let people know that they can reach out to us at support@dataclay.com after this live stream. So if you're watching this just as a video playback, feel free to reach out to us at support@dataclay.com. I tried to put that in the chat, but it won't let you put email addresses in the chat. So I just left a note about support. So anyway, it's been a phenomenal demo. You did an incredible job. I don't think people can appreciate the logistics on your end of having to do most people are probably looking at this and thinking, they recorded this before they posted live. Even most people's recordings include a few mess ups. So it was a phenomenal job. I wanted to see if any last comments came through, but at the moment, I don't see any further comments other than a lot of congratulations and great jobs.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
So with that, we're approaching about 43 minutes, and I think that we can wrap it up. Do you want to? Let's hit some high points on Projector for people who tuned in late. And I want them to understand, like our templater product, this is a locally installed application. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. It's an app that works on Windows and Mac OS. It runs as desktop software. It's similar to Slack. It's kind of built in that same framework where it's a desktop app, but it could be deployed as a web app, but we're deciding to distribute it as a installable app. It'll have a licensing mechanism, much like Templator, with a key, and you activate it, and certain things will be able to be accomplished with a trial, and then once you activate, you can further use it and the way that it's documented. And I think that, again, it's really about protecting the actual content. I think as a producer myself, before I became like a dev nerd, that was one of the more important things that I realized that producers actually needed to guarantee that their content wasn't being shared. So yeah, I think that I am seeing Michael's question. When can we get access? Sorry if I missed it. Thank you, Michael, for that question. I think that we should be looking at a pre-Thanksgiving release for the beta. So sometime before end of November, which would be great. And then general availability sometime right after the new year, after we hear back from y'all. And then have I tested on a virtual machine like AWS? Not quite yet. We have not tested on like something like Windows Server, but certainly it'll work on like a virtual Mac OS. It's built to, be compatible with, Windows environments and Mac OS environments. So another question I'm seeing, will there be a CLI version of Projector? That is a great question. I don't think that we have that in store for the immediate, for general availability. We won't have that on our list, but that is certainly a good idea, similar to Templator. We'll consider that, but really, it's kind of one of these things where you set it and forget it, right? So like, it's not necessarily meant to be a push data into Projector. It's meant to be a pull data from QUE, right? Like Templator has both the push data and pull data. Projector, we're going to release with just the pulling of the data from the data source. So the idea is technically you're supposed to just enable the bot and then leave it alone, and then just have it on all the time and not worry about anything else. And all of the data would control what Projector does every now and then. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Also, do you want to talk a little bit about AE render and how Projector uses AE render?
Yeah. So behind the scenes, if you decide to, I'm going to go ahead and close out Projector. It's doing something funny here. Quit it and let's open it back up. The thing about the AE render is this. The problem with After Effects and the problem with Templator is that they're not cheap, right? Like I'm not oblivious to that fact. Like for a small production division, it's not the cheapest thing out there. However, when you scale it, that's when it really becomes a problem at this point in time. With Projector, the hope is that you would have a nominal amount of machines just creating replicates of After Effects autographs, right? Like just the master templates, creating them as AEP files, replicate AEP files, and those AEP files would be deployed to other machines that just had AE render on it, which doesn't require a license from the Adobe side. And so the idea would be to for a person to, Templator would do the reversioning, but Projector would be doing the rendering and deployment. And you don't need, with the export feature that we have here, this enable AEP rendering, that would effectively allow end users to have, they install After Effects on those machines that they need to render, but they don't need to log in with the Creative Cloud ID or anything like that. And this checkbox effectively tells Projector, hey, use AE render, the command line interface, to render out project files. And so that is a very, very cheap way to scale up very, very efficiently. And so that's the hope, right, of this in the future, is that you would have, your fleet of machines would just be the reversioning and then the rendering and deployment as separate entities altogether.
We got a question about price, and I just want to say, as the salesperson, while we haven't set the price quite yet, it will be less than the subscription price of Templator.
Yeah.
And we are looking at anybody that has both a Templator and a QUE account, a bot license and a paid QUE account, will probably get a free, at least one free license of Projector.
Yeah. So there are going to be, obviously when we release it, we want some adoption, right? So, I would say, like, it's going to be affordable for, the get-go. It's not going to be cost prohibitive from the get-go. We're looking to obviously see how people eventually do use it. And then, we'll go from there. But I think that at the moment, Projector does rely on QUE. So if you do have a subscription to our QUE data source, that Projector is kind of like an extension to that. So, a single license we've discussed as being, kind of as a courtesy for subscribing to QUE would make sense. But we're also, we're going to be supporting Google Sheets with Projector as well, because we know a lot of users are just using spreadsheets as well. So we're going to figure that out before general availability. Yeah.
You see that question about other platforms besides YouTube, Vimeo, and JW Player?
That is a great question. So the answer to that is I wish. And the reason I wish is because these platforms are very, very protective about kind of these kinds of tools that auto upload content, right? And so, for example, like Instagram, you have to go through a huge process to get what they would call like a partner status, so that your app could, talk to its API to auto upload. That's number one. Number two is that, I personally think a QA step between the content creation and the distribution, there needs to be a human or something that says, yes, this is good, post it to Instagram. You definitely don't want the automation posting automatically to Instagram without some kind of review or some kind of preview effectively. I think that it would be nice. I think we'll make headway into trying to get more integrations like that. But at this point, I can't guarantee, just because of those platforms' terms of service. Now, Vimeo has a great API. JW Platform has a great API for doing this kind of batch uploading, and that's why we chose to use these from the get-go.
How about from the standpoint of using the QUE integration and doing your own custom integration of platforms for Projector? I know that we talked about the QUE API and the potential of it being able to be used. Do you want to speak to that for a second?
Yeah. So if you go to QUE API, I think it docs.dataclay.com. I think it's this one. Yeah. This is kind of where developers can build their own interactions with QUE outside of that this dashboard, right? So basically, once the assets are on those platforms, even if it's just storage, like it's just those assets get deployed just to storage, and you turn off the streaming feature of Projector, you can use the API to do whatever you want, right? Like you can take that content and move it to some other platform, or integrate it with something like Salesforce or MailChimp, things like that. So this is kind of where that custom work would happen. But keep in mind that QUE and Zapier also work hand in hand. So you can do things with Zapier where Zapier will examine a particular job, and if it notices the job streaming status is set to done or on stream, it can do something as well. So you can actually build things with a no code solution as well.
Yeah. So if Zapier already is able to upload to the platform you're interested in, then right there you've got the potential for a QUE integration.
Right. So, yeah. And, I just think that I just wanted to say really quickly that, we want to make this a more regular occurrence, not just demoing software. I think this is just a lot of energy was put forth to determining how we're going to do the streaming stuff. But we want to host y'all. Like if you're using our software and you're kind of one of these folks who produce this kind of content of, personalized content, localized content for digital signage networks that are data driven, we want to have you on this podcast and kind of talk about what you're doing with it and get the word out about, your service as well. So just keep that in mind as we, push forward on new marketing efforts.
All right. Well, I think that's it for questions. So,
okay. All right.
It's been a great podcast. I'm going to thank everybody for joining us today.
Yes,
and with
Thanks,
that, I think we're done for the day. So,
all right. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Until next time. All right. Take care. Have a great week.